It's great to see so many friendly faces. It's also great to see those who have recovered from eye connections. There's quite a few here. Thank you to those that powered through the weather. I know there's more coming. If you were late, we tried to go as late as we can, but we've got the schedule. I've written down here, don't go off tangent, don't name anyone, or don't mention anything that happened in Miami that could potentially embarrass anyone. Especially, don't mention Ronan Guilfoyle's tight white golf shorts issues. Mike, do we have a video? Maybe later. Don't worry, we'll share it. It's great to have so many people fly in this week. Thank you for everyone that's come. A special mention to the AMA Cayman chairperson, Tim Rossiter, who's flown in. Tim, give everyone a wave. Well done, thank you, Tim. I think it's safe to assume everyone is here for this event, the GT event of the week. A special mention to the Schulte team for arranging their event the same week and also moving it to Tuesday, wherever they are. Thank you guys, giving us the prime spot on Thursday. Great bunch, whoever Dan and John and the team are, thank you. We have two fantastic sessions organized for everyone today, followed by food, drinks, networking. There'll be more people coming, obviously, with the weather, but we should have a big crowd. Before we start, I have a quick apology. With GT's strong relationship in golf, growing the game, we had organized some golf swag, including 200 and something Titleist GT hats. But unfortunately, my good pals in the Lexington have either misplaced them or stolen them or borrowed them, I don't know. I said, do not go on more here, but I will. As a guy who worked in a hotel 20 years ago for a solid 6 weeks, I don't know how you lose 200 hats. But it's okay. We looked at actually trying to make a change, and we were going to get hats that said, let's make audit great again. But sorry, it's a poor audit joke. A special apologies to our friends that have come in from Denmark. I know it's a bit of a sore subject for you guys at the moment. Good guys, but yeah. But on a serious note, look, if anyone does see Lexington hotel staff wearing Titleist, purple, white, brown Thornton hats, obviously let us know. But don't worry, we do have some swag, so there'll be swag given out outside. I know the Arootah guys have some, and in between, we're going to give away 2 Titleist drivers. So everyone's name is in the hat, you'll be picked out, and you get to go away with these $800 drivers. Yes, actually, off script, the Titleist, great bunch of guys, have named their driver GT. So their TV ads say it's the best driver in the world, the GT driver. Just think about that, quality, driver, GT. Really good, thank you Titleist. A very few quick thank yous. First of all to Jay Seeley, Mike Patnell and the team for all the logistics. Thank you guys. It's not easy to run this. Big thank you to Brian Tissot. Where is Brian? Is he here? He was here. So thank you again for your network and all the help. And of course, thank you to the team Arootah for the content today. I have a feeling it's going to be fantastic, especially with the likes of Dan Hunter and the other speakers. So obviously, no pressure, Rich. We're expecting a lot as a group. So please sit back, enjoy, relax. I'm going to start by just giving a quick intro to Rich. I've shortened his CV substantially because it's rather long. He is the co-founder and COO of Blue Ridge Capital for over 25 years. Managed 10 billion AUM. Held senior positions with Tiger Management, Morgan Stanley, and EY. We won't hold that against you, but it's okay. He's a consultant and donor for Help for Children, over 58 million grants raised. Serves on the board of iMentor, 42,000 mentor-mentee pairs, and is the author of 15 books and counting. Please give a warm welcome to the founder and CEO of Arootah, Mr. Rich Bello.
Well, thanks everybody for taking the time out of your busy day. I love time management, so I'm going to make sure that you guys get a nice investment in your time here. I know we have about an hour or so. We got a little bit of a late start. So thanks, Greg. Thanks for the Grant Thornton team for inviting us, for hosting. Also, we'd like to welcome Brian Size, Pure Exchange. Some of the folks are here today. So now keep in mind, this is just a framework for some top leadership principles. This is not something we're going to go into depth into the skills. As Greg said, I've written 15 books. You want to go into depth? That's where it is. So we're going to touch on some things. We'll discuss some points, some pointers, some top tips in the leadership principles. And as any leader knows, a mindset of a leader is they're really curious. So if you're curious about something, write it down, and then you can dig deeper into it. So let's talk a little bit about Arootah. So some of you know me from my years in the industry, my 30 years in the industry. Maybe some of you know me as the co-founder of Blue Ridge Capital with John Griffin, who's the consummate leader. But many of you probably don't know about Arootah and why I've been invited here to speak on the topic of leadership. So Arootah is the organization that I wish had existed when I was at Blue Ridge in my perch as the chief operating officer and John's perch as the portfolio manager. At the end of the day, we're really a talent organization. We rely heavily on technology to leverage our clients' experiences. The bottom line is at Arootah, we transform potential into peak performance. And that we do this both at the individual level and at the business level. So this is primarily for the alternative investment industry. So if you have talent challenge, Arootah is the answer, or we'll know where to find it. We have 3 main business lines: talent development, we do all kinds of executive function, leadership training. We do talent outsourcing. Talent outsourcing is basically we have a network of over 500 advisors that can come in and do any type of work that you need them to do. They can do a best practice review. They can sub in for somebody who might be on leave. They can do ad hoc work. We have these advisors who are in every single area of a function, of every single function of an alternative investment firm. CCOs, chief financial officers, CISOs, portfolio managers, analysts, you name it. And we also do talent acquisition. Now, if we're going to work with you on talent acquisition, we're going to be working with you as a partnership. We don't just source something. You don't just give us a job description. We partner with firms. Otherwise, we don't think it makes sense to work with you because it's such an important thing. So at Arootah, we have a winning formula. And this is really for anybody. The winning formula that we believe works is accumulating knowledge. That's why I've written so many books. Knowledge plus process. Now, we like to talk about that knowledge does not apply itself. You have to make the application. You can sit here and learn a lot of stuff today, but if you don't apply it, what good is it? So process to apply the knowledge. Knowledge plus process plus technology. We leverage technology to make the application of the process more efficient and effective. And then you add experts. Coaches, advisors, add experts. These coaches and advisors get you really clear on your goals, have a strategy to help you to implement these goals or a plan, and most importantly, there's an accountability strategy to make sure you actually execute. Everybody knows execution is the hardest part. So for us, the knowledge are the books that we have. We have some publications. We do some newsletters. Then we have the experts, right? With technology, then we have the experts. We've developed a bunch of SaaS tools. And we have the experts. These are the 500 advisors. And we also have 500 coaches on our staff, executive coaches. These are coaches that are life coaches, health coaches, career coaches, and most importantly for you guys, executive coaches. Now, since this is supposed to be a workshop, right, we have these engagement sheets. Does everybody see the engagement sheets? Show of hands, people see the engagement sheets? So it's a workshop. You have a sheet on your table. Please fill it out. These will be handed in and graded at the end. I think Greg is the teaching assistant. He'll be grading them, so obviously I'm kidding. But this is really for you. If you find a tip, something interesting, write it down. Like I said, knowledge does not apply itself. You'll want to dig in deeper on that. You're going to forget. You'll come out of here, especially since we're going to be drinking our faces off right after this. You're going to forget. Write the important things down. Knowledge doesn't apply itself. You've got to make the application. If you have something that's like, you know what, I really should be doing that. It's like, you know what, write it down. I've had the great privilege of working with Julian Robertson at Tiger Managers. I sat directly across from Julian on the Tiger trading desk. Very interesting experience. Now, some of the senior analysts there were people like Andreas Halverson, Steve Mandel, Lee Ainsley, all went on to run these gigantic organizations. John Griffin was the president there. I learned a lot from these leaders. So I believe that success leaves clues. And I've been studying these top leadership skills for as long as I can remember. And I've always felt that the real key to leadership is influence, the ability to influence others. Now, I recall the day that was the day before that John and I launched Blue Ridge Capital. We were walking across the street, and I think he wanted this to be a teaching moment for me. And he said, hey, you want to know my secret? What my secret of success is? Now, John is by far the most successful person that I had ever known. He was the president of Tiger Management, I believe at 28 years old. Tiger at the time was the top firm on Wall Street. He's on the board of UVA, the board of trustees. He founded iMentor, perfect family. It's a very long list. So when John asked me, do I want to know his secrets of success, I said, not really. I don't really care what it is. And I said, of course I want to know your secret of success. You're the most successful person that I know. And he said, it's the Dale Carnegie course. So I took the Dale Carnegie course, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I see a couple of Blue Ridge people. They know how passionate John was about it. And he asked me, I'll send you. Do you want to go? And I said, no, not really. Of course I want to go. He's like, I'll pay for you to go. So I went. Now, if you ask Warren Buffett, he'll tell you the same exact thing. The smartest thing he's ever done, Dale Carnegie course. He keeps that certificate. That's the only thing he keeps in his office behind him. The Dale Carnegie course certificate is that important to him. So the key here isn't the Dale Carnegie course. The key here is influence. Influence is such an important part of leadership. Learn how to influence. In fact, I wrote a book on influence myself. I was so interested in it. I was curious about it. We wrote our own book on that. So let's talk a little bit about the first principle, and that's mindset. So mindset really is programming your subconscious mind with ways of thinking. We have to master our minds. If we don't master our minds will master us. So mindset is a way of thinking. You're training your mind, training your subconscious in how to think. And we'll talk about some of these mindsets in a second. But on the global side, there are kind of global mindsets. Leaders follow one of these two. There are limiting mindsets. They're called limiting beliefs. These limiting beliefs are obstacles. If you have a limiting belief on something, say you want to work out, just don't have enough time, right? You're working too hard, whatever it is, you don't have enough time to work. It's like, you know what, I can't do that. Or anything you want to do. You can't do X because I don't have enough time. You know, it's a super high priority for you. It's a limiting belief. You probably do. Right? So if you're talking to a coach, our coaches are always looking for limiting beliefs. We can't get that done, you can't get that goal done. It's usually a limiting belief. So they're trained to look for an empowering belief. So if your limiting belief is, you know what, I don't have enough time to get that done, think of an empowering belief. You know what, time is the one thing that we all have the same exact amount of. It's the one thing, everybody's got the same exact amount. The President of the United States, same amount of time as a little kindergartner, right? We all have the same amount of time. So the issue is not that you don't have enough time, you're not prioritizing your time. That's an empowering belief. So I need to prioritize my time to make sure that I can work out or whatever it is, spend more time with my kids or spend more time at work. Usually that's not the case. Right? So that's limiting versus empowering beliefs. You know, another one might be, I'm not a natural leader. Right? I'm not a natural born leader. So, you know, that's just the way it is. I'll be a follower instead. An empowering belief is leadership is a skill I can develop through experience and learning. One of the reasons why you guys are here. Or networking. You know what? Networking feels forced, inauthentic. That's a limiting belief. Building relationships really creates valuable opportunities for growth and impact. That's an empowering belief. So really strive to have your leader. You're going to look for empowering beliefs. You're not going to look for excuses not to get things done. So, you know, as a challenge, this might be, you know, an area where CTAs, let me think about the limiting beliefs. Here's a goal that I have. I'm just not able to get it done. Is it because of a limiting belief? Let's talk about some leadership mindsets now. So a leadership mindset that I like, and it's kind of another global belief, is a locus of control. There are two types of people in this world. People have locus of control that is an external locus of control, and people have internal locuses of control. An external locus of control are people that think things happen to me. They have a reactive behavior, right? They blame other things. They blame the market or other people. Internal locus of control is I create my own outcomes. This is proactive behavior. External locus of control is reactive behavior. This happened to me, so I do this. This happened. No, internal locus of control people believe that they have control over the outcomes in their lives, and they're not just governed by luck, ruled by luck. Top leaders don't blame the markets. They refine their investment strategies. They improve their risk management. They find new opportunities. So now, the best leaders follow these four minds. There's others, but these are four that I really like. A growth mindset. Leaders never stop learning, right? Your ability is not fixed. This is the growth versus fixed mindset. Fixed mindset's I'm either good at something or I'm not. Growth mindset is I can prove anything that I set my sight on. Warren Buffett hated public speaking. He took that Dale Carnegie course and he turned it into one of his biggest strengths. A growth mindset. If you're not growing, you're just falling behind. Grit. When people hire other people, they're looking at grit as one of the top traits. Grit is perseverance. It's passion. Most successful people aren't always the smartest, but they're the most relentless. Steve Jobs, fired from Apple. Instead of quitting, what did he do? He built Next, Pixar, then he went back. Took over Apple. He had grit. Chrysotunity, this is one that I got from John Griffin. We were writing a partner letter. He taught me this. Chrysotunity means every crisis contains an opportunity. There's an opportunity in every crisis. Look for the opportunity. If you just say, oh, there's a crisis, bummer, can't get this done, defeatist attitude. Look for the opportunity. Usually that's where the best opportunities are. So there was an example of Netflix, right? DVDs came out. It's like, uh-oh, DVDs come out, we're done. No, they didn't say we're done. What did they do? They pivoted to streaming, right? So did Blockbuster, right? That's what Blockbuster did too, right? Oh no, Blockbuster didn't do that. They didn't do it. Goodbye, Blockbuster. Curiosity. Leaders are always super curious, right? Make sure you're curious about anything that will lead to maximizing your potential. Okay, so that's mindset principle 1. Principle 2, we talk about mission, goals, and plans. This is the blueprint for success. Hopefully, anybody know Grant Thornton's mission? Just happen to have it here. Grant Thornton's mission is to be the leading business advisor to dynamic organizations by helping them unlock their potential for growth. Love it. They have a mission. I love the quote from Yogi Berra. If you don't know where you're going, I think it's up there. If you don't know where you're going, you might end up someplace else. Know where you're going. You don't want to end up someplace. So you want to know where you're going. You want to end up there. Every great leader, team, and company operates with a clear mission, well-defined goals, and plans to achieve those goals. Great leaders are proactive. They're not reactive. So your mission is what defines your purpose. Why do you exist? Right? It's the why. The goals set the direct direction for getting to where you exist, and the plans tell you how to get there. Right? That's the how. How do I get there? Now, of course, you still have to execute on them. So the mission's your foundation. Now, I believe that missions should not just be at the overall level of an organization. Missions should be at the team level, individual level, division level, partner level. There should be missions for everybody. It shouldn't just be a mission at the organization level. That's usually too lofty. But all of these missions need to follow each other. They must be in alignment. And then, so what's Amazon's mission? Right? It's to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. It drives every decision that they make, from faster shipping to AI recommendations. Now, values are the DNA of a mission. They define what you stand for. Values should be non-negotiable. All decisions should be based on a company's values, the core values, and to make sure they're clearly communicated and lived, not just written down. They need to be lived. Bridgewater has a value of radical transparency. Everybody knows that, right? It shapes its culture, its decision-making, and its feedback system. So you want to live by principles, and Ray has his book Principles. I love that. That translates the values into the actionable rules. Puts it on paper. That's where the ball field is. You're playing by actionable rules. That's where your code of conduct comes from. One of his principles at Bridgewater is never let loyalty stand in the way of truth and excellence. This shapes hiring, performance, reviews, strategic planning, everything. One of Arootah's values is accountability. Whenever we talk, whenever we have a meeting and somebody's assigned to do something, we have one of our admin assistants says, okay, who, what, when? Who's assigned to do it? Who's responsible for it? What exactly is it that they're responsible for it? And when will it be done by? It's written down, it's put into our technology. So you want to make sure your values aren't just words. You have principles and codes of conduct to make them real. So goals. Everybody knows, the goals are the subsets of a mission, but everybody knows SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. People know what those are. So we wanted to dig deeper. So smarter goals, right? So you can see what some of the smarter goals are. Goals must be written down. If they're not written down, they're not happening, right? Most people have New Year's, they have their New Year's resolutions, and then when's the next time that they talk about their resolutions or their goals? Next time you talk is usually next New Year's. How are you doing with that? right? Oh yeah, I forgot about that. You didn't write them down. Goals must be purpose-driven. They have to have rewards and consequences. If you achieve your goal, you want to make sure you have your reward. If you don't achieve the goal, consequence, pain. What happens if you fail? And you want to feel it. It should be pain. It really should be real emotion. When we're setting goals at Arootah or with our clients, we make sure that there are rewards and consequences. That's what drives them to achieve their goals. Now, in the SMART goals, it's, make sure goals are achievable, right? I don't like that so much. Barely achievable, maybe not even achievable. Maybe you're not sure. You want them to be really challenging. You want to be excellent, especially in this industry. You've got to set some really tough goals. And we talk about time-bound. That usually means that they're deadlines, time-bound, in the SMART goals. I think start lines are more important than deadlines. Deadlines are important, don't get me wrong, but start lines, you got to get started, right? Procrastination. If you don't have a start line, you can procrastinate on something. Get started. Think about when you're going to work out. That's the hardest part is starting. Have a start line. Make sure they're reviewed periodically. Your goals should be reviewed periodically, not just by you, but by your teams. Make sure they're out there. And then have some type of accountability strategy. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. So, plans, right? So mission, goals, plans. You need a plan. If you don't have a plan, your goal is just a dream. Your mission is just going to be a dream. You need a plan. There are 16 components to a plan. We're not going to go through this. We're going to go through one of my favorites, though, one that I think is the most important. If you want to look at the other 16, you can take a look at our goals book, Goal Principles book. The one that I think is interesting and important is brainstorming. A lot of people just dive into a plan. They don't brainstorm, right? They just start writing stuff down. Brainstorming is what's referred to as divergent thinking. Divergent thinking. You want to get out there, you want to brainstorm, you want to get into a good brainstorming mood, a creative mood, right? You want to brainstorm, right? This is not linear thinking. You want to come up with as many ideas as possible. We're not looking for, when we're brainstorming, we're not looking for quality. We're looking for quantity. Just get all the ideas out of your head, right? From you, from your team. There's mind mapping is a way to do this. Then you move into convergent thinking. That's linear thinking. That's when you take a look, you filter. It's like, this isn't a good idea. That was stupid. Good idea. Better idea. Right? When Steve Jobs developed the iPhone, brainstorming. That's what led him to it. Divergent thinking led to so many ideas. And then the final execution plan required a disciplined focus. No physical keyboard, sleek design, intuitive UI. Right? So, are your plans actionable? Right? You guys have plans out there. First of all, have you written down your goals? Have you written down plans for your goals, right? If you've started out on your goals, you started brainstorming, you just start writing action items down. Think about these things. Think about these things in your CTAs as we go. So now we're going to move on to measurement. As the immortal Peter Drucker said, you can't manage what you don't measure. It's true. It's very true. I know John Griffin, we talked about, it's like, I love that. He's like, yeah, I really love that. So you can't develop a culture of accountability without measuring things. It's the only way to understand whether a firm, a team, or an individual is making progress on its goals. And I've broken this down into 3 types of measurements: progress measurements, classification of measurements, and resource measurements. So in progress measurements, people make mistakes, leaders even make mistakes in thinking about that progress on a particular plan and executing the plan. That's good enough. That'll get us there. That's a winning plan. But that's not it. You do need to measure if we're making progress on your plans. And more importantly, you need to measure if you're making progress on the goal itself. So you can take this back to basketball game, right? Coach, we're executing the plan. They've executed the plan. We're executing the plan. Game's over. Team lost. Coach happy that they executed the plan. We executed the plan perfectly. The team's like, well, but we lost, Coach. Right? No. It's about winning. It's all about winning. Only winning matters. Right? I know people say you can learn from the, I don't believe that, right? What did Pat Riley say? There's winning and there's misery. Right? I like that. So there's all kinds of measurements. So you want to focus on both plan execution and the goal progress. There's all kinds of measurements, KPIs. I think the wonderful Kate Peachway is going to speak about some of that on the panel, so I'm not going to dig into that, put the pressure on her. Now, there's 2 types of classifications of measurements. There's qualitative and there's quantitative. Qualitative is for babies. You want to have quantitative measurements. Right now, I'm somewhat kidding. Sometimes you can only measure qualitatively, but you want to have quantitative. This is specific, right? You don't want to wimp out and just have quality. You know, that was pretty good, or a 1 to 10 scale, that was good. No, no, no. Measure. Remember, in the first letter of goal setting, it's specific. You want to be as specific as possible. You only get there by quantitative measurements. Now, resource management. Everybody knows that a leader's job is to manage resources. You've got to manage your resources. I believe that the top 3 resources are time, human resources, and then capital, in that order. You've got to manage your time. It's most important. Time is the one resource, right, that we all have the same amount of, and it's finite. You've got to manage your time. Once it's gone forever. Money you can get back. Once your time is gone, that's it, it's gone forever. Then human resources, these are the multipliers of time. You can't run a business without human resources. For now, AI is coming, you'll be able to do it soon enough. But for now, we still need humans. So you've got to measure revenue per full-time employee. There's all kinds of measurements for both time and for human resources. And then capital. We all know, measurement of time. I think capital comes last. Just want to make sure that people understand that time is so important to measure. We have somebody at Arootah. That's just what they do. That's all they do. They measure time. More important than our financial statements, right? Measuring time. All right. Let's move to accountability. This is the fuel of execution. Really hard, accountability. So any seasoned investor knows that the hardest part of running a business is execution. Right? It's often said that a poor product with a strong management team who can execute is better than an amazing product with poor execution, a management team that can't execute. Right? What's the key to execution? Accountability. So when I think about accountability, I think about 4 types of accountability. First one is upwards accountability. That's a dangerous one. That's holding your boss accountable. It's tricky. You have to be careful because you could get fired. Right? Never do it in front of others. Right? Don't do it in front of the team. Right? Unless your boss is an extremely high IQ like myself. Right? Never do it in front of customers. Right? Never do that. Okay? So you have to work on that. But it's important. You do need to hold the boss accountable. It's not that you don't need to hold the boss accountable. I like to be held accountable. Peer accountability. So it's also difficult. Holding your teammates accountable, people on the same level. Why is this one difficult? This one's difficult because you don't really have the leverage. Right? You don't really have the leverage when you're at the same level. You don't have the leverage, you don't have the compensation leverage. So a good example of this one is Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. I think it was 1990. They had lost their third, this is the Eastern Conference Finals, and they lost for the 3rd year in a row. For people who are old enough to remember this, Michael was beside himself on the team bus home, beside himself. He had done everything. He worked out so hard in the offseason, worked so hard. He'd done everything. He was literally crying on the bus. And his coach said, he told his coach, I've done everything I can, coach. We can't make it over the hump. Limiting belief, by the way. His coach said, no, you haven't. You've done everything for yourself, but you haven't worked on the accountability for your teammates. You haven't held your teammates accountable. And he did, right? Next year, held his teammates accountable, 6 world championships. But that was the big lesson that he got. That was the game changer for him, literally. So the other type of accountability is subordinates. Right? Holding people that work for you accountable. We all know that's not easy. Think it'd be easy? It's not easy. So I have a process that I've come up with. Common sense. Usually common sense is uncommon, though most people don't do it. So number 1 is set expectations. Make sure that whatever it is that you want your employees to do, your subordinates to do, they're very clear, right? Metrics, deadlines, similar to setting smarter goals. State these consequences and rewards. What are they? If you don't get this done, this is what happens, the consequence. If you do get it done, this is what your reward is. What happens if they succeed or fail? Get a commitment. Make it official. Make sure they commit to it. It can't just be you tell them to do it. They have to say, yes, I'll do it. Right? I'll do it. Right? So we talk about at Arootah, I'll do it. We want people to commit to it. I won't say that, I don't have them say, I'll do it, Mr. Bello. They say, I'll do it. We'll make sure we get it done. You hear that? It's like, this person's serious. They're going to get it done. So you get a commitment, put it in writing. It could be an email, but just make sure it's in writing. It's like, otherwise there's confusion. You know what? I don't think I said that, or did you? Put it in writing. Measure progress periodically. Don't wait until the end. Course correct early. And then the hardest part, that's enforcing the consequences. Right? The rewards are easy to enforce. You did a good job, do it. Enforcing the consequences, we all know. That's really hard. That's really the hardest part when you're dealing with support. Hey, you didn't get it done. We agreed on this. You said and we agreed on the consequence. You got to do it, otherwise they won't take you seriously next time. Now here's the toughest one, self-accountability. When I'm talking to teams, I ask them, when I talk to leaders of teams, I ask them, who is the hardest person on the team to lead? And most people get it. Who is it? Shout out. Who's the hardest person on your team to lead? Heard a couple of whispers out there. Yeah, it's yourselves. Yeah, it's yourselves. Really hard to lead yourselves. Really, it's the first principle that we talked about. It's hard to lead yourself because it's hard to control your mind. Right? It's really hard to lead yourself. So there's two forces if you want to be held accountable to doing something. One force is willpower. Good luck with that. It's very difficult. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, and we wrote a book on this. It's very difficult. Willpower is very difficult. And the other force are some outside forces. These can be coaches, somebody to hold you accountable. These can be coaches, peers, and competition. Right? Peer accountability is great. Healthy pressure. The top organizations have their peers and teammates holding themselves accountable. Right? That's the Chicago Bulls, right? 6 championships. Technology, there are apps, reminders. I've been using this app, this habit tracker I've been using for 20 years, and people say, hey, I tell people about it, hey, that's interesting. So we put it out there. We built it, and it's out there. It's on the App Store. Apps can help you. Public commitment. So, I've written 15 books in the last, I think, 2.5 years. They're real books. They're out there. You can see them. These are great books, right, on these topics, if I do say so myself. I'm very humble. Now, these books, the first one took me 20 years to write, till my coach told me, it's like, I really want to write this book. It's killing me. I can't get this book done. So he's like, you know what? Tell everybody you know you're going to write a book and invite them to a seminar on the book release. In 3 months. It's like, 3 months? Right? You can write a book in 3 months? 3 months. Did it. Now, the accountability strategy was public humiliation. I was not going to come in front of all my peers, all my friends. I was like, I would be humiliated. I'm coming with a book. It's like, where's the book? I'm like, I didn't get it done. I procrastinated. I didn't get it done. No, that's my accountability strategy. I got it done. It's like, wow, this really works. It's like, let's write another one. 2 months. Let's write a book in 2. Now, people on my team thought I was crazy, and I told them, if you don't believe that we can do it in 2 months, I don't want you on the book writing team to help me. Right? And there were a few people like, you're out of your mind, not going to write a good book. I'm obviously going to write a book in 2 months, blah, blah, blah. But that's a limiting belief. I didn't want anybody with limiting beliefs on my team. I wanted people, yes, we can get it done. And we did. So public humiliation and accountability strategy. The key is to have an accountability strategy. Coaches are my favorite in terms of helping me with accountability. Let's move on to emotional intelligence now. So here, emotional intelligence is really the ability to recognize, manage, and leverage emotions for better decisions and relationships. It's not just your own emotions. If people think emotional intelligence, I just got to manage my own emotions. No. You need to be able to recognize and manage others' emotions and deal with other people's emotions. So the key to mastering EQ is realizing that emotions are signals. They are not directives to act. It's just a signal. This comes from our evolutionary times. They're just signals. They're evolutionary tools. Now, most people just react automatically rather than pausing and responding intentionally. Great leaders are able to separate emotion from action. They ensure that their response aligns with their long-term goals. So they're signals. These emotions are signals. When I first heard it, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So fear, what's a signal for fear? There's danger, right? You better prepare for it. There's danger here. That's a signal for fear. Something happens, you better prepare for it. Anger, a boundary or a principle has been violated, right? What's the automatic response for anger? Fight. You fight. Anger, you fight, right? It doesn't have to be a physical fight, it can be a verbal fight, but that's the automatic response. Now, there are positive emotions too. Excitement, right? There's an opportunity. Excitement means there's an opportunity. The signal is there's an opportunity. You're excited by the opportunity. What do? You go get it. You pursue it, right? Gratitude. What does that mean? The signal is you have enough. That's enough. You've got enough, right? You connect, you sustain, you keep it where it is. So without this awareness, it's really a mindfulness. When people talk about mindfulness, I think this is the key to it, being mindful of your emotions. The key is to pause before you react. And I've written this in a few different books. So why is pausing so important? It interrupts this autopilot, this emotional autopilot, keeps you from impulsive reactions. It creates a space for better decision making. It strengthens your leadership presence. Leader who can control their emotions really earns greater respect from their team. So I came up with a 10-step process. I keep tweaking and changing this as I go. I've had this for years and years and years. So first, if you feel an emotion, first is to recognize, like, oh, I have an emotion. Don't react. Pause. Don't react. Stop right there. Take a breath. I think this is my first one in the last few minutes. Take a breath. Right? Name the emotion. Right? What's the emotion? Is it anger? Is it fear? Is it frustration? Is it excitement? Right? Identify the signal. What's this emotion trying to tell me? Then ask, is it real? Many times, in fact, probably most times, fear is not real. Fear, F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. In the Hindu religions, they talk about the story where there's a snake in the road. It's like, oh my God, a snake, a snake, a snake. And then people are freaking out, and then they walk up to it, it's just a piece of rope. It's not really, it's not really a snake, it's a piece of rope. False evidence appearing real. So if it's not real, you just let it go right there. You can stop right at step 5. It's like, this is stupid. I shouldn't have gotten mad. I shouldn't have been afraid. Let it go right there. Now, if it is real or some semblance of reality, define your objective. Don't just react. What's the outcome that I really want? If the subordinate challenges you in a meeting, right? Your objective may be to appear calm and composed, not to react emotionally. Make sure that's your objective, some type of objective like that. Whatever it is, consider your options. How do I get that done? Here's my objective. I want to react calmly, not emotionally. What are my options? Maybe say, hey, let's talk about this later. Let's talk about this one-on-one. Some other options. Consider your options. Decide on an option. What's the best option to take? Act on it. Execute your response with control and confidence. And then reflect on it. How did that work out? It's like, you know what? That worked out really well, as opposed to having an outburst or having a poor team meeting, right? Think about that. Right, so recognize emotions as signals, not commands, not directives. Master the pause. I love this quote by Viktor Frankl. It's actually Stephen Covey, but it gets attributed to Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Utilize that. It is so powerful. And then you can apply the 10-step process. There's other processes, but apply that process. Apply some process. You don't just auto-react. Communication. It's the foundation of leadership. Great leaders don't just talk. They exchange information effectively. They resolve conflicts carefully. They build trust. They inspire action. So communicating concisely. And again, there's a book on communication principles. You want to go into depth in any of this stuff. These are just some of the best stuff. For me, I think one of the keys to being successful in my career is being able to take complex ideas and make them simple, especially for your boss. Right, at Blue Ridge, I would sometimes spend hours and hours, sometimes days, breaking down a complex issue so that I can explain it to John Griffin easily so he can make a decision quickly. And they can be like, oh, got it, Rich. Yeah, do that. Right, I spent hours sometimes in my team. I was like, why are you spending so much time? Why don't you just give it to John? He's so smart. He's like, no. We want John, right, Kate? We want John, the golden goose, to be spending his time making money for the firm. Right? Right, yeah. Right? That's where we want him to be. Right? We don't want him spending time on decisions that the rest of the team could do. That's not a good use of his time. Active listening. Listening to understand, not just to respond. And people, this is a great mistake that most people make in communication, is that when they're talking to somebody, they're thinking about, and when they're listening on the other side, they're thinking about what they're going to say next, as opposed to just really deeply listening. If you deeply listen, you'll have something better to say. Right now, coaches are really good at this. They're trained to really listen. They're looking for the obstacles. Why can't this person achieve this goal? They're looking for the opposite, and they're really looking for limiting beliefs, mostly. So when, an example is Warren Buffett, he credits listening more than talking as one of his greatest leadership tools. Conflict resolution. Transforming disagreements into productive discussion. For me, this is all about win-win. We're not going to talk about this here because the great Steve Bruce is going to talk about this on the panel. And same with crisis communication, leading with clarity. We'll talk about that some more on the panel. Feedback mastery. So communication, feedback, not giving feedback, receiving feedback, that's the tough one. Feedback, the reason why people have a difficulty receiving feedback is because they think they're being attacked, physically attacked. Right? It's fear, again, false evidence, but they're not being physically attacked. Like, oh my gosh, defense mechanisms go up, it's not coming in. Feedback isn't an attack. It could be, if it's not being delivered properly, but usually it's an opportunity for growth. And even if it is an attack, you can just let it go. Don't put up a wall. That's why people react defensively. At Blue Ridge, what we do for my team is I'd have somebody else come in and train people on this. Right? Maria knows this, right? They would train them when we did reviews, before reviews were delivered, we'd have somebody come in and train people on this. They didn't want to hear from me, I was the boss, like, or it's like talking to dad, like, But when they hear from somebody else, like, oh, that's really interesting. Oh, I've been telling you guys this for a while. No, it comes from this person's an expert, blah, blah, blah. The best CEOs actively seek critical feedback, by the way. They want feedback. You know, I love it. We have some people on our teams like, thank you for the feedback, and they're sincere about it. Most people like, don't say thank you for the feedback. They say something else to you for the feedback. Right? Great leaders don't fear feedback. They use it to improve and grow. So think about these things when you're receiving feedback next time. It's like, you know what, let me just stay open to it. Maybe there's something I can learn here. When you're in a conversation next, listen actively. Say, oh, yep, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next. Put that aside. And just test it out. See, maybe if I listen more, I'll say something a lot more intelligent. Decision making. So for me, the key for decision making, obviously, this is a leadership skill, making the best decisions. That's what leaders do. So for me, it's, should I use logic or intuition? The great dilemma, right? Now, the answer is, it depends. Depends on the situation. So Dan Kahneman, for those of you who probably have heard it, big in the industry, Thinking Fast and Slow, explains we have two systems for decision making. One is fast thinking, that's intuition. Now this is good for automatic instinctive responses when you have a lot of experience in the area. If you're a cardiologist and you see somebody coming in, it's like, you've done 1,000 surgeries, like, I see it, I got it. They can use intuition. They don't need to study it, tell me your symptoms, blah, 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 go deeply and start researching it. Tell you their symptoms, they can make a decision. You need to go into the knife right away. Or it's like, you're fine, you're just a crybaby. Right? Quick decisions in familiar, high pressure situations. A seasoned trader, right, recognizes a market inefficiency, capitalizes it immediately. System 2, this is slow thinking. This is logic, analytical, methodical. This requires effort and data. So these are best for complex, high-stakes decisions requiring deep analysis where you may not have a ton of experience. So an example, a hedge fund manager carefully evaluates new investments using financial models right before committing the capital of his or her LPs. Malcolm Gladwell talks about this as well in Blink. People mistakenly think they think that he's just all about intuition. I happen to be privileged to have met with him and chatted with him about this. And he said, people got it. He said, you're right, people get it wrong. That's not what my book is about. They didn't read the goddamn book. That's not what it's about. It's not just about, hey, follow your intuition. No. It's racked with bias and errors. Only if you have a lot of experience in this area should you use your Blink. An art expert, right, spots a fake instantly. Right, well, an inexperienced collector might get duped. Now, one of the things that I learned when we wrote a book on decisions, there is decision principles, is comparative scoring. I stumbled upon this and started asking some decision experts, like, oh yeah, that's a thing. So comparative scoring, the best way I can describe it is when you're looking at candidates, if you have a lot of options, it could be houses or candidates, you have a lot of options, you score them individually, and you come up with a score for them. So we do this. We have this great process at Arootah for talent acquisition. We have a lot of scoring. Score them on interviews. We do all kinds of scoring. And there's soft skills, hard technical skills. Then we weed them out. We come up with the top of the top. So maybe we'll take the top 3. We've interviewed maybe 50 people, top 3. From those top 3, it's like, I don't know, how do we figure that out? Do we use intuition? No, we don't use intuition. What we do is we take those top 3, and I think there's a slide. If you can, is that the next slide, Christina? this is what we do. So candidate scoring. We'll take a look at each candidate. So say we have 5 candidates. We'll look at each of the skills. This is an abbreviated version. We'll look at all their soft skills, all their technical skills, and we'll look at the assessments. And we'll get the whole team, anybody who's interviewed this person, we all come into the room and take a look at, all right, candidate A versus candidate B versus candidate C versus candidate C in grid. Which one works? Because we have questions. We ask them, which do you think will work the hardest? Which has grit? Which one will persevere? And there are no ties. There can be no ties. Like, yeah, but this one's like, no, we don't allow ties. We've got to force our way through it, force curving, as we called it at Blue Ridge. There can be no ties. Okay, grit. We've ranked them. Then we go to work ethic, right? Blah, blah, blah. Then we go to technical skills, programming, and so on. We have 10 of each of these. We'll also have them do projects, which had the better project. So if you do it individually, we can go back. If you do it individually, it's in a vacuum. You may have just started scoring, maybe you haven't seen any other candidates yet. It's not right. This was an eye-opener to me and made our process so much better. It's like, now we're really comfortable. And we get these 5 candidates, like, really comfortable. Like, yep, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Still may make the wrong decision, but we've done the best we could. Flow with individual scoring, it's done in isolation, creating false precision. Score of 90 versus 85 might not mean much without comparison. The key is comparison. And this is for anything, by the way. You do this for stocks, for houses, for whatever. So this is head-to-head ranking, no ties allowed. When I'm thinking about decision making, one of the great flaws, as we know, especially in the financial industry, is cognitive biases. These are mental shortcuts. They're there. The great architects, they're there just by mistake. No, the great architect put them there for a reason. They're mental shortcuts in our evolutionary history. So we had to make quick decisions based on patterns. So we get a pattern, boom, do this. Now, in modern times, they influence how we interpret information that can lead to irrational choices. Even the most experienced leaders fall into these traps. So there's 4 common biases. The sunk cost bias is really popular in the portfolio management realm. Work so hard, put so much money, so much time into researching this stock, don't want to let it go. That's not the right decision. Now, the thing that I find very interesting is people can know that they're in a cognitive bias and still make the wrong decision. I know I shouldn't do it, but it's really hard to do. This is where coaching helps. Say, hey, what are you doing? Right? What are you doing? You've been in the stock for so long. Is this really the best stock? Is this really where your capital should be? Evaluate decisions based on future benefits, not past costs. Really hard. You have these cognitive biases. Recency bias, what happened last matters the most. Obviously, that's stupid, right? Same thing with anchoring bias. What happened first means the most. No, it's stupid, but it's a cognitive bias. You have to be aware of it. Confirmation bias. So this one I liken to Fox News and CNN, right? You either watch Fox or you watch CNN. Confirming your views, right? This is just my views, my views, my views. Obviously, that's also stupid. You want to have the bull and the bear case. You don't want to just be looking at one or the other. So great decision makers, they recognize and they counter these cognitive biases. They have people challenge them. So from decision making, I came up with a process. There's all kinds of processes, but this is the one that I studied and came up with. It's fairly simple. It's common sense to me. I've worked really hard in developing it. And common sense is very uncommon, as I said. So first step, choose the criteria. What matters most for this decision? What matters most? The criteria. Second, weigh the criteria. Not every criteria matters the same. Management might mean, might be the most important criteria rather than a moat around your business, whatever it is. What's your criteria for investing, for your decision? We can think about even buying a house, for instance. What's the criteria? It might be like kitchen quality, school distance, backyard, commuting distance. Right? You prioritize things. What's most important? School quality might be 40%, backyard 30%, kitchen 20%, the commute 10%. You give them a score. Then you have to have a rubric on how to score them. So for instance, school distance might be, if it's within a mile, it gets 10 points. Within 2 miles, between a mile and 2 miles, 9 points. You have to have a rubric for actually scoring them. Come up with this rubric in advance. Then choose some options. Choose 10 houses. 10 houses, 10 stocks. Here's 10 houses. Went out, looked at these houses based on the rough criteria. Then you score the options based on the rubric. select the homes, right? Select the homes and score the options based on some criteria, the criteria that you developed and that rubric. House A, closest to school, but has a small backyard. You're scoring it, though. It's getting a numerical score. Again, not qualitative. I don't want to say just a small backyard. How big is the backyard? Not small backyard. We want to be quantitative. This one I found very interesting, and I learned this one from the great Tony Robbins when he was talking about decision making. It's mitigating the cons. So you may have a con for a decision. There may be something wrong. You really, this actually happened to me. Really like this house. Really like it. Clicked on all the other criteria, but a small backyard. It's like, ugh, I really love this house, but a small backyard. So I'm thinking, how do I mitigate that con? So I was looking at it, Google Maps, I was like, behind it, there was this gigantic area, trees, where I was like, what is that? And apparently, it was a giant park. So now this park bordered me. There was trails through it, basketball courts. I was like, that's my backyard. I had an 1,100-acre backyard. So think about mitigating cons. When you have a decision, it might be a great option. It's like, except for this killer. Don't give up. Right? It's persistence. This is grit. Don't give up. It's like, how can I change that? Somebody is perfect for the job, but they don't have a particular skill. It's like, oh man, the perfect soft skills. They don't have this particular hard skill, this technical skill, so too bad. Too bad? Now, anybody with grit or has this mindset, mitigating the cons, like, we'll train them. We'll train them in this one. Bring this person on board. Rescore after mitigating the con. Compare the finalists. This is the comparative scoring that we talked about. Only then do I bring in intuition. Right at the end, it's like, these are the way they scored. This house, it was like, then I was like, is this the house that I thought would win? If it wasn't, I want to think about why. There was a situation at Blue Ridge where we were looking at administrators. We were choosing administrators. And I had my team, so the leader's job is to come up with the criteria. I had my team go out, measure the administrators, Morgan Stanley, Citgo, I don't think Goldman was there at the time, in case Dean is here somewhere. And they came back to me, and the winner was Citgo. Apologize if any Citgo people are here. So the winner was Citgo. My team came back and with this method, this decision matrix. I see Maria smiling. She may remember this. And my team came back with glee, by the way, because they're like, Citgo wins. They knew I wanted Morgan Stanley to win because I worked at Morgan Stanley. I had friends at Morgan Stanley. I wanted them to win. But they're like, it's your process, Rich. Your criteria, it's your process. It's like, that's true. Let me think about it. It's like, wait. Did we put relationship? Was relationship one of the criteria in the matrix? Like, no, it wasn't. It's like, put relationship in and go back and score and come back. If Citgo still wins, we go with Citgo. Now, you could say, like, I just wanted was manipulating, but relationship was really important. We really left that out. They came back, and of course, we knew everybody at Morgan Stanley, knew all the top people, and Morgan Stanley won. And it turned out to be an amazing decision for us. That relationship meant so much in the future for us. We were able to get this, that, blah, 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 blah. So the point, though, is that when your intuition disagrees with what your logical score is, think about, is there a logical reason that I'm missing? Is there something that I'm missing? So that's all intuition is, just fast thinking. It's like in your body. It's coming up with these things that you don't think about. So that was missing. It's like, why did I think Morgan Stanley was going to win? We were missing that. Not always going to be the case. Then you have a problem. If your intuition and your logical score agree, then boom, you move forward with conviction. You're really happy. This is the house that I thought would win, and it scores the best. Boom, buy it. There's a stock I thought, blah, blah, blah. Side move boldly. So let's move on to habits. So habits are just automatic behaviors, right? These are things that we repeat daily, often without any conscious thought. They're not just random things, right? These are things, most of our behaviors, most of our actions are habitual. Anywhere from 50 to 90%, they've shown, are habitual things, habitual actions. Now, the purpose of actions is, again, the great architect had a reason for this, to conserve energy. If we had to think about all of the actions we do repeatedly every time, how do I walk? Blah, blah, I have to think about it. It's stupid, right? Put all this cognitive energy into it. So it runs like a program. Boom, programs it into your subconscious mind. You just do it automatically. Something called the habit loop. And the habit loop is kind of the neuroscience, but the habit loop is there's a trigger. Trigger leads to a craving. So you might walk by a bakery. right? Leads to a craving, you smell it. Now the craving releases dopamine, which is very interesting. We'll talk about that in a second. Then you do the behavior. You, of course, go in and you buy the donut, right? Or a bagel, whatever, you buy it, right? And then you get a reward, another hit of dopamine. And then that loop just keeps going. You reinforce it. The dopamine for the craving encourages you to go get it. Right? It's, hey, we're giving you a little reward, a little taste, go get it. And then the reward at the end, tastes great, more dopamine. And every time you do it, reinforces it. That's called the habit loop. You get this double hit of dopamine. So when I'm thinking about habits, and again, we've written a book on the habit principles. One of the key habits that I like to talk about is our keystone habits. They're really special because they have this cascade effect. One habit can lead to another habit, can lead to another habit. So you want to focus on those habits to lead to other habits, either lead to positive habits, right, cascading, or they may lead to negative habits. So let's use sleep as an example. What happens with sleep? What does sleep lead to? Right? If you instill sleep, what will it lead to? It'll lead to better exercise, better diet choices. There are reasons why you release different hormones when you get enough sleep. If you don't get enough sleep, you eat too much. You get enough sleep, you eat just right. Exercise, diet can lead to alcohol consumption, right? Impulse control goes down when you don't get enough sleep. Let's conversely look at alcohol consumption as a habit. Maybe this is a keystone habit that you want to work on. Maybe eliminating alcohol. This single change now has a ripple effect on other habits. Coincidentally, on sleep, right? Do you get great sleep when you drink alcohol? I don't think anybody drinks in here, but if you did, you've heard the people, they don't get great sleep when they drink alcohol, right? They don't exercise, they're too tired to exercise. Diet, right? Do you eat better or worse when you're drinking? Probably not better. So anyway, if you're going to focus on a habit, focus on a keystone habit. You might as well, if you spend that energy on a particular habit, focus on that habit that leads to other habits, positive or negative. So when we're talking about habits, it's really triggers are the key. I have a process. Again, like I talked about in the beginning, whenever I learn something, I have a process to instill that knowledge. Knowledge is not going to apply itself. So we have a process, and we'll usually have some technology that goes along with it. In this case, we have the habit tracker that I talked about before. So if you want to instill a habit, first look at the triggers. What are the triggers that surround that habit? What's causing that? Don't walk down that block where the bakery is. You smell the bakery, you're going in, right? Don't walk down that block. Think about environment. Now you can manipulate this, right? Brain hack this to create triggers to do things that you want to do, right? Put in good triggers, right? If you want to exercise, have some equipment around. Have a cool trainer there, right? Put a good trigger in so that it encourages you to do that. Environment is where it's all about for habits. Identify any limiting beliefs. I can't quit that because of this, can't quit nicotine because of this or that, right? Identify these limiting beliefs. Talk to your coach, get an empowering belief. Have an accountability strategy. One of the accountability strategies that I used with one of my clients was called it bet against me. This client wanted to do something, and I told him, bet against all of the people that you know, all your friends, on this a small amount of money, $20, right? That say you can't do this. They say you can't achieve this goal. So what happens if I bet against all of you $20, right? I say, I'm going to do it. It's $20 for you guys, no big deal. For me, it's a lot of money. Gives me what? Leverage, incentive, right, to get it done. He got it done. It worked beautifully. I bet against him, even though he was my client. Now, one of the problems with if you're on a good roll, you get a lot of momentum, and you've got a habit. You don't want to get out. You don't want to lose that momentum. I used to be afraid of going on vacation. It's like, I'm on a good roll, working out. But vacation, oh no. You go on vacation, what happens? You get out of your momentum, you get out of your habit. So what I have my clients do, and we encourage our coaches to do this with our clients, is you come up with a pre-situation plan, I call it. I'm going on vacation, going to Atlantis. I'm going to find a trainer, make sure I know where the gym is. I'm going to do some healthy things, make sure I know where some healthy food is. There's an ashram down there. I'm going to eat there a couple of times. Pre-situation plan. So when you go, you've got a plan. Otherwise, all hell breaks loose, right? And you're off your habit. You come back, it's gone. Like I was working out, I was doing so good, right? And then you lose it. don't want to lose it. It takes a long time to reinstill those habits. Don't blow it. It's habits. All right. Team. So for me, you want to build a great team, right? You develop that team. So when you're building a great team, you want to make sure you understand the gaps. You've got all these skills, and you're missing some skills. A lot of times people are encouraged by themselves, by cognitive bias, hiring people like themselves. Like, I really like that person. Oh, they went to Wharton. You worked at Tiger? I worked at Tiger too. Blue Ridge? Oh my God, you're hired, right? They like people who are like themselves. You like pugs? I have a pug. You like the Knicks? I like. You like the Celtics? Not hiring you. Not a chance. Right. Tom Brady? Never. So you got to be thinking about these cognitive biases. Think about, this is where I think diversity is important. Not for quotas and all that stuff. Diversity is really important to have diverse viewpoints on your team. Right? That helps you to solve problems. You want to have diverse viewpoints when you're solving problems. Sourcing, referrals. I generally don't like referrals from an employee in the firm, right? Because there's all kinds of cognitive biases. That's your friend, there's this and there's that. The chances that you know the best person for that job are probably zero. Somebody in the firm knows the best person for that job, probably zero. Now, you may not be able to find somebody. That may be the best person you can find. But go out and look. It's also just a really lazy way to source candidates. Go out and look for the best person. Then if you can't find somebody better, then you can hire that referral. But don't just like, hey, there's a referral, this is the person that does that. So I have a pet peeve of, hey, this is a referral. We look really carefully. It doesn't mean I don't do it. I think JP Morgan, Michael Mead can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there was a test on this at JP Morgan. They just hired referrals, and my understanding is it went horribly wrong. Somebody told me this once. I can't verify that, but I'd be interested in knowing that, Mike. Skills assessment comes to hiring candidates. Look at both hard skills and soft skills. The more mature I get and the longer I'm in this business, the more important I realize the soft skills, how important the soft skills are. Soft skills, as my coach said to me, he's like, Rich, I told you this years ago. The soft skills are the hard skills. Like, those are the tough skills, right? Technical skills you can generally learn. The soft skills you can learn, they're a lot harder. References, listed references. Are they valuable? Garbage. Listed references are pretty close to garbage, of course, right? And you see our recruiter is like, yeah, they're garbage, right? Listed references, they're always going to give you a good reference. I've had one time in my career where listed reference, the person gave me a great reference on this person. This person's amazing, amazing, amazing. 3 hours later, I was going to hire the person. 3 hours later, I get a call. I was like, I couldn't live with myself. I was like, don't hire that person. I know they put me as a reference, but don't hire that person. You'll be sorry. I was like, I'll keep it totally confidential. I so respected that person. Unlisted references, on the other hand, now only if you know the unlisted reference better than the candidate, right? If you don't know the unlisted reference better than the candidate, you're still going to get a lousy reference. But if you can get an unlisted reference on somebody, that's better than interview. It's better than interviewing. It's better than testing. It's better than work. They know the person. They've worked with them. They know the person. Like, yeah, this person's a killer. Grab that person or don't do it. If you can get unlisted right now, you have to be careful, especially if people have jobs. You want to be really careful. Compensation, really important, right? So, we work with Shelley Eisenhandler. She's in the industry. Compensation, if you get it wrong, right, you can lose the person, right? You don't pay them enough, you can lose them, they go somewhere. Or you pay them way too much. In this industry, you can pay them millions and millions too much in this industry. Development, people on your team. This one perplexes me. I never really understood why leaders of firms don't spend enough resources on developing their people. These are human resources, the most important resource you have. They'll spend money on all different kinds of things, but they don't spend money on their people. And we're going to talk a little bit about this on the panel. I have some ideas on why this is. It's a linking issue, but I'm always very interested in that. You guys, this is development for you guys. You guys have pursued this on your own. I don't think anybody's sent you here, but this is such an important area. And finally, let's talk about time management, my favorite. Time management, it isn't just about being organized, right? It's a strategic allocation of our most important resource. We talked a little bit about this before. Time is your most important resource by far. Once it's gone, you can't get it back. The key to managing time is to prioritize. So here's a quick story. Warren Buffett, a pilot, and the pilot was very interested in learning about time management. So he asked him, he's like, Warren, please tell me, what's your top secret in time? He said, well, pilot, write down your top 25 goals on a piece of paper. Came back, here's my top 25 goals. Circle the top 5. And he did that, circled the top 5. He said, now what are you going to do? The pilot said, well, I'm going to work on these top 5, but I'm going to work on the other 20 intermittently around those top 5. And Warren said, no. Those 20 goals are the enemy of getting the 5 goals done. They're the enemy. You spend time on things that are less important. That's what procrastination is. The very definition of procrastination is doing things that are less important before you do the more important things. Right? No. You want to do the more important things first. Another definition of procrastination is ruining your life for no apparent reason. Right? Why would you do that? It's just stupid. Why would you work on things that are less important instead of things that are more important? Now, there are different prioritization frameworks that people have. There's the Eisenhower-Covey matrix. Raise your hand if people are familiar with that matrix. Eisenhower-Covey made this matrix. Shocking. You guys are leaders? I'm somebody from my firm. This is a really important. So this comes from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. Anybody heard of that book? Yeah, people heard of that book. So this is chapter 3 in that book, habit 3, first things first. So I'll go through it real quick since you guys haven't heard of it. But the idea is there are 4 quadrants where you want to spend your time, where you do spend your time. It's a matrix that has urgent, not urgent, important, and not urgent. Urgent you can think of as time sensitive also. So the idea is leaders want to spend their time right here in areas that are not urgent but important. That's right here where you guys are right now. This is not urgent. You didn't have to come here. It's important, though, if you're a leader. You might want to do some networking or hear about some cool leadership topics. It's important to be here. This area, urgent and important, you don't want to be there, but you have to be there. This is the zone of stress. You got to do it. These are high deadline things, crises, problems. You don't want to be there, but you have to spend time there. The more time you spend here in quadrant 2, that's not urgent but important, the less time you spend here in the zone of stress, because this is about preparation, preventing crises. Now this quadrant here, not important but urgent. This is a sneaky quadrant of delusion. These are emails that you answer. These are other people's problems. These are things that are not really priorities, but you spend time there because you think they're urgent. You think they're time sensitive. There's a lot of social media stuff that you're doing. I must answer this. I must answer all text messages. No, you don't. You have to answer. I must answer all emails. No, you don't. A lot of times you can just delegate some of this stuff, but this is the zone of delusion. People spend a lot of time here, waste their time here in this quadrant. And here is the quadrant of waste. It's not urgent, not important, quadrant of waste. So people tell me, it's like, well, Rich, you don't spend any time on things that are not urgent and not important. You don't watch TV, you don't watch it. I do. I spend time there. But I don't believe that it's wasted time. It's important for me. It's important to, I won't overwatch. I won't watch 3 seasons of Seinfeld, at one time to catch up on Seinfeld. I won't do that, right? But one or 2 shows, I consider that important. Not urgent, but important because it's good stress release. Right? It's good to laugh every once in a while. But I've watched a whole season of it. Yeah, that's a waste of time. So you don't want to spend any time on things that are not important, not urgent. You want to spend most of your time in areas that are not urgent and important. Take a look at, we talk about this in our book also on time management. You also take a look at, the Covey's book it's the classic, one of my favorite books of all time. Arootah, we have our own process for a time management. Call it the SOAM process, Strategic Administrative Operating Management System, where we take a look at mission. We talked about this before. What's your mission? What are your goals? Prioritize your goals. Have plans to achieve your goals. Prioritize the actions within those plans. Right? These are the things that are going to get you to your mission the fastest. Then we take a look at all of the actions, the prioritized actions, and actions that may have come outside of the plans. Actions from emails, from meetings. From there, we prioritize them. We do a priority report, weekly priority report. Everybody in the firm does a priority report. Priority report is, where are you going to spend your time next week? Where are you going to spend your time next week? Have a plan for where you can spend it. Don't be reactive, be proactive. Schedule in your calendar. Track your time. Where did you actually spend your time? Track your time. And then do a budget versus actual. Where did I say I was going to spend my time in my priority report? Where did I actually spend my time? Doing this, and you can see why you may not have gotten something done. I wanted to write a book, didn't get it done. Why not? I said I was going to spend my time here. I didn't. There may be a good reason why you didn't, but at least know why you didn't get the book written. Let's talk a little bit more about procrastination real quick. Why do we procrastinate? I do a whole seminar on procrastination. Why do we procrastinate? The simple answer is we prioritize immediate gratification over fulfillment, over long-term fulfillment. We just do. It's our evolutionary, it's our biological way. We got to get the food, right? It may not be there. We might starve. That's literally why we procrastinate. Now, there are some times where it's good to procrastinate. I call it mindful procrastination. You may start something too early. Right? If you got something to do in 3 months, if you give yourself 3 months to do it, you'll take 3 months to do it. You waste a lot of time. And you may not get that creative flow, that excitement, because there's a deadline. You're a lot more creative when you, that's why I don't give myself 3 months to write a book, I give myself only 2 months to write a book. My team hates this about me, by the way, because they don't like your mindful procrastination stuff, because then they have to, there's some stress involved in this as well. But if you can turn the stress into excitement, then it's not, then it's not a bad form of stress, it's called eustress. And finally, there's a type of procrastination without deadlines. You can procrastinate on things that have deadlines, like your taxes, right? There's a paper to be written, and you'll get it done. What's the harm? Stress. You might do a little stress, but you'll get it done. There are things that are out there that you may really want to do. Maybe you had a fight with a loved one, and I'll make up with them sometime, and then something happens. Maybe you wanted to work out. I'm going to work out. Work out next week. Yeah, next month I'll do it. You don't work out, heart attack. Right? These are things that don't have apparent deadline. There's a deadline, you just don't know when it is. These are things that don't have apparent deadlines. These are the hardest things to get done. You wanted to write a book, you never got it done. This is why I love my coaches. They don't let me get away with the things that don't have deadlines. They set a deadline, right? Set a deadline to write the book like I talked about before. This is why I love my coaches. They don't let me get away with tasks, with goals, without deadlines. They make sure I set a deadline, have an accountability strategy. That's procrastination. We're going to jump into the panel in a moment. Remember, knowledge does not apply itself. You have to make the application. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Fantastic.
Thank you. Now stop.
So we are going to give a 2 or 3 minute break so people can run to the bathroom, get a drink. Thank you. Really good. I love quotes. Really good. Want a quote for your next book? Maybe? Knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. There you go. We're gonna raffle away the prize, and the winner of the prize, I knew you know that. I like that one, Brad. Was Tom Richardson from Wintrust. Is Tom here? Tom Richardson, Wintrust. Come on up, buddy. You get the first driver. So guys, 2 or 3 minute break, and then we're going to start again. Thank you.
We'll have to let the panel introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Dan.
I'm Dan Hunter. I'm the co-head of the investment management practice at Schulte, Roth, and Zabel. And I know a lot of you in the audience, so it's great to be here. I'm a big fan of Rich and Greg.
Hey everyone, I'm Kate Peachway, and I'm the CFO of TS Imagine. We're a software company, and you can think of us as the rails that our industry runs on. So we are a SaaS, global, multi-asset, order and trading execution, portfolio and risk management, and prime brokerage software. We are private equity backed, owned by Francisco Partners. We have 400 people in 10 global offices, and we're approaching 150 million of revenue.
I guess I'm Steve Bruce, founding partner of ASC Advisors. We're a strategic communications firm that solely represents investment managers, conflict-free, which is really kind of nice. There's a lot of folks in the room that are very familiar, so it's great to see here. We're going to share some great war stories, and luckily appreciate Rich inviting me. He was my client and good friend for many years, so we're going to have a lot of fun things to talk about, including sometimes to put on your seatbelts.
I'm Dean Backer. I'm a partner at Goldman Sachs, and I'm the global chairman of our prime brokerage business and co-head our markets business. I think I've engaged with everyone on the panel in different forms. And Rich, thank you for putting together such a terrific panel. I'm really happy to be part of it.
Thank you, Dean. I'm glad you can make it. I know you're heading to California. We've been making it hard in a little while. So we'll get started. So, Kate, so early on at your company, you helped to avert a crisis. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. We're going to talk about crisis management a little bit, but maybe get the party started.
Yeah. So March 2023, early March 23, I was less than 6 months into this job, and I saw the SVB news swirling. I turned to my controller and I said, I think we have a lot of cash sitting there, like 3/4 or something, probably more of our cash balance. He said, how long is it going to take to move this? It's like a couple hours. I was like, all right, move it. So, the week progressed, and it was that Thursday, and it was like the now infamous Greg Becker call, the just stay calm is like 2 words you never want a bank CEO to say. And my phone is blowing up. My CEO's calling me, my board is calling me, like my dentist is calling me, and we're like, no. I'm like, we're good. Like, we moved the money. And it was like this jubilation. And then it quickly shifted into like, well, how'd you know to move the money? And the weekend set in, and I think I had PTSD, also because in all seriousness, like I think we all have a lot of good friends who run companies, and that was like a very stressful weekend of all of us listening to Bill Ackman talk on Twitter. And I moved the money because I'm a short seller. And so my takeaway to you all about decision making is just to have a risk mindset, just to even be aware of risk. And I have one other takeaway for you all about this decision, which is that when I plan my business, I don't plan for one scenario. I plan for multiple scenarios of the world. And I'm constantly watching balls and strikes. Honestly, I don't even know what that means because I'm a tennis player, but and I'm trying to see if we're shifting to one case or the other. So now, maybe a little bit different for like a company that makes things versus an investment manager, but I think what is the takeaway for you all is that decision making, right, it's not a static thing, it's always changing. So to also link that you're gonna have a couple of moments every year when something will change and you actually have to act, and act quickly.
And acting quickly, yes. So speaking of that, Goldman's good at acting quickly. Dean, maybe you can give us some examples of some good and bad decisions, or maybe one of each that we've made at the time of Goldman, maybe some of the broader impacts of this.
Sure. Couple things, and I'm not exactly sure what you mean by the Goldman acting quickly comment. But you did bring up earlier, not to wind us back, because I know we're running a bit over time, your use of public humiliation when you punitively want to somebody. And I know after the last panel I did, you said you better do a good job or else. And in the 15 minutes I've been here, one, I want to be clear, you did not give Goldman Sachs a look at that fund administration, as my friend knows. Number two, I'm looking at the quality of name tag at that end of the table. This is my name tag.
It's a handwriting competition.
And I'll leave it there. But yeah, I mean, spending almost 30 years at Goldman Sachs, I've obviously been on sides of many tables, many decisions, some of which I had a little to do with, some of which I had a lot to do with, some of which I look back on and I'm absolutely certain they were the right decisions. Some I look back on and I'm absolutely certain they were the right decisions at the time. Some I look back on and I'm not sure, and some I look back on and I'm sure they weren't the right decisions. I think a couple things I would just say as it relates to decision making, and which you covered all this in a level of detail I could never, but a couple things I would say. I think one, in making a decision, I and we try to understand, is it a heavy decision or a light decision? Meaning, what's the potential impact, fallout, gain of that decision? Two, how much time do we have to make the decision? And three, understanding the context and the audience that are on both sides of the decision. So with that in mind, Couple of examples, and I'll try to keep them related to people, because I think most of your practice and so much of your positive impact is on people. I remember it was years ago. I had just become a partner, so I was in a new partner class at Goldman Sachs, and I was hosting a panel like this for the launch of the Women's Network at Goldman Sachs. Didn't totally make sense to me why I was hosting the panel, but I was. And we had 3 of the most senior female partners at the firm on this panel. 2 of them you know by first and last name, and one of them because they ran a esoteric trading business you've probably never heard of. And this decision is not a gender-specific decision, but the question I had asked her was not too dissimilar for maybe where you're going to end today, which is for this group of people in the audience were analysts, associates, and because it was over the summer analysts. So these were all people that had been at the firm somewhere between 1 month and 4 years, were generally between the age of 19 and 25. And I looked at a panelist who was one of my best friends at the firm and actually helped me become partner. And the advice she started to give to this young group of hopefully rising professionals was the worst advice I'd ever heard. The advice she was giving worked for her as a senior partner who had thousands of people working for her that could say whatever she wanted to whomever she wanted, and that would be fine. The audience she was presenting to were hoping to get an offer at the end of the summer, hoping to get promoted to associate, maybe getting a third-year analyst. And whether it was a group of young women or young men, the advice she gave would have been a disaster. And I didn't know what to do. I kind of walked it back in the age of walking things back during the network presentation, and I thought, I remember talking to her before the panel to prep for the panel, asking what she was going to cover, and I remember saying, I haven't decided yet. So something happened that her decision became, I'm going to give what I think is great advice, and it was for the 3 other people at her level who ran divisions at Goldman Sachs. It was terrible advice for everyone else in the room. So that stuck out with me about kind of knowing your audience and knowing the context of decision making. On the flip side, and it was a hard decision I was personally involved in. For those of you that remember the Lehman days, we had been aggressively trying to hire a very young, talented person from Lehman who had an expertise in the quant space, which was not a space that Goldman was especially strong in, not a space that Goldman was especially known for, yet a space where we wanted to grow multiple lines of businesses. And we hired him as literally the last person out of Lehman. And then about 2 weeks later, we had gotten from our division heads a note that, things are very tough. Every business needs to downsize 5-10% of the people. And most businesses went with the kind of last in, first out approach, which was people that have been here, who've been loyal, who have sacrificed, who have done great things at Goldman. They should get the priority over those that may be newer to the firm. And I wound up cutting somebody. To this day, I think about it, it worked out better for this person, became a client, and we're very good friends now, thankfully. And we didn't reduce Phil's head, who became a partner 2 years ago and runs the second and third most profitable business within the securities system at Goldman. So those would be 2 examples, I think, that are people related that I've been on different ends of that still to this day kind of resonate with me.
Interesting. Well, let's hopefully, I'm going to ask you the next question. Dan, hopefully you don't give some advice that Dean disagrees with. So, look, you
Guess I'm the contrarian on the panel. So the brand we're.
So you've risen to the top of your firm, Schulte, and really to the top of the industry. Along the way, that takes leadership, obviously. So we talked in kind of the pre-event, pre-panel chat about some leadership tips that you might have. Love to hear some of your top leadership tips.
So the key to these tips, is something that could be transferable that somebody else could use. I think a lot of people think that leadership is innate. I disagree with that. I think it's exercise like a muscle, and there are tips that have been able to translate to me over time. There was somebody who was a stockbroker, I think they now call it wealth management, UBS. This guy had a huge book of business. I said, how do you do it? How do you stay on top of everything? I was either a young partner or special counsel at the time. He said, I delegate that everything that's not strategic. I look at my desk and everything I go down, is it strategic or not? If it's not strategic, I don't do it. And I've kept that in mind and used it every day since. And what that does is it frees you up time to be a leader, to help run a department, because in my line of work, you can look and say, okay, well, at this level, I should be the term sheet person. You're very senior, you should be at the term sheets. That's strategic, giving really strategic advice. And then everything that's really not term sheet level, you're probably not going to be as involved in. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to do everything that's below that, and you should do it in a certain way. And what I mean by that is, was exemplified by somebody who was teaching me skiing last week, and she's very young, she's 22, and she's done 6 seasons of teaching. And when she comes into the lot where all the skis go, she does the same turns as she does at the top of the mountain. And I asked her name's Ruby Rose, and I said, Ruby, why do you turn? A lot of people do sloppy turns. They come into lunch, they're tired, or they want to come in fast and do a hockey stop. And she says, I'm a skiing expert, and I do the same turns whether I'm coming in for lunch, or I'm at the top of the mountain, or I'm off piste, or I'm on piste. I do the same exact turns. And so I think about that as a law partner all the time, and I try to teach the people who work with me and work for me to make the same emails, the same cover emails, the same, whether it's a certificate you're filing. I say there's a certain way to do it, and it's a law partner way to do this, and every single thing you touch should be filed like a law partner would file. So it's the same motto, it's the same ski turn. So I think that those are 2 transferable things that you can do in your practice and make sure that you're delegating everything that's not strategic, and that when you come into your ski turns for lunch, that you're doing them exactly the way that you do them at the top of the hill.
Interesting, very good. So let's turn to you, Steve. As the top of the business in PR, you face a lot of crisis situations. Maybe you can give us some tips on how you deal with them, what your advice is as a leader to leaders. Usually the leaders are the ones dealing with crisis situations. We can only have 2 people that can speak to the press, or leaders. Maybe give us a little advice on how do you deal with the situation after it's happened, and then we turn around the next question and talk about
So one of the first things when we are called into a crisis situation that we say is, who's going to retain us? Because PR firms can be the weakest link. And so we always ask to be retained by counsel. And depending on the nature of the crisis and whether you could answer this very simple question, is the firm going to live or die? Because sometimes that's how simple the outcome, what we're looking at through this. So really having an understanding, putting together the crisis team at that moment, that needs to include the GC, head of business development, and the chief operating officer, and only occasionally do you want the CIO to be involved, or founder, depending on their role. You don't want them away from their focus on making money. A lot of times you will find that the founders want to dig into the crisis and forget about what's happening on the floor. That leads to a very unfortunate outcome. So that's kind of the first set of tips. The other things that we try to tell people is that when you think your investors are going to be your friends in a crisis, you can be completely shocked. They are sometimes the first folks that are talking to the press, giving out information, including false information. And I'll give you a good example. Many of you may have remembered Amaranth. They had a big energy trading issue that caused the firm to basically download several $1 billion of positions to a combination of Citadel and JP Morgan. There were other deals in the works. One investor started talking to reporters claiming that they knew all about this in advance and that they had pulled out. The problem was that that was fiction, but they were going out of their way to talk to reporters to tell them that story. So you have to be prepared. You also have to be prepared for news to be made up on the fly. There was another moment in Amaranth where we had to get on the phone with David Faber from CNBC because a different news service had misreported what he said, so he had to go on air to correct it. The same thing happened with Ellington. First few hours of Ellington, when they opened the bond market on Columbus Day, and it was reported that they were bankrupt and that somebody had committed suicide. Well, I was right there in their offices, and we had to get, again, two of the reporters to get all of that corrected, as there was going to be a potential run on the bank. So time and time again, having a good crisis team in place, understanding all of the issues that can occur, deciding what and when you want to communicate. Sometimes less is more in these situations, deciding who you need to communicate to and when. There are instances, for example, when the SEC may have sent you a letter. Do you have to disclose that? This is where working with Dan and others in the room can make a big difference. And you may not need to disclose it. But we're going to talk about the back end of this and what FCA is proposing, which is going to turn that upside down, and I want everybody to pay attention to that. So there's a slew of things: understanding your social media policies, making sure that employees know that they're not to talk to the press. There are going to be elements, having those types of controls are going to be critical to coming out of a crisis situation intact. The other thing that's really important in a crisis situation, especially if it's involving legal or regulatory matters, the government may know more than you do. We saw that happen with SAC, and it cost them $2 billion. So I'll leave it there.
And you're holding Rich's the crisis management principles, so you're well read up on that.
Well, Rich and I collaborated on this quite a bit, and it was really a great idea in terms of the series of books that he's done. This is pretty much the playbook for you. And I hope that many of you will take the time to look at it because it really does provide the step-by-step elements of it, many of which I've talked about, and a lot of other pieces of it. It's a great guide that I would say almost any GC or chief operating officer should have. The one story I will finish with is Diamondback. So they were raided by the FBI in 2010. And the most interesting call I got at about 11:30 that night was from the chief operating officer, who said that he went to his chief operating officer manual and he was looking for the section that says, what happens when the FBI raids you? And of course it didn't exist because it never happened before. But then I think along with a strong glass of whatever he was drinking, he said, I bet you by next week every law firm will have one.
Rich, can I quickly add one comment? Because you mentioned something that I think is really, really important. And I'm not exactly sure the demographics breakup of the room, but I assume most people here are hedge fund operators, CFOs, COOs versus investors or allocators. But you brought up a great point, which is in many cases, investors are your friends, and in some cases they're not. I can tell you, during my tenure at Goldman, I've done countless calls from hedge fund owners, GPs, really angry, not understanding how we, and I've had this discussion with my peers at Prime Brokerage, this is how we could talk about a position or talk about an situation. And my usual response is, do you really think Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley or JP Morgan is calling Wall Street Journal and it's mentioning that you're now over 10% synthetically short? I said, you send a letter out every month or every quarter to somewhere between 99 and 499 people. And we would then have to do an audit to make sure nobody at Goldman, I can tell you, out of the conservatively 50, 60, 70 of those types of calls I got, never has the broker-dealer been the source of that. So I asked her to caution a little bit of the information you put out there when you want to communicate. You just share it, but it's in real life. It can be a double-edged sword sometimes.
And even sometimes the government puts breadcrumbs out there for the media. So let me give you the best example. So when Front Point ended up having an insider trading crisis, the day that they announced the arrest of a French doctor who was the tipper, he was the one that was giving the Front Point guy all the information. In the complaint, it said that the tipper provided the information to a portfolio manager at a hedge fund based in Greenwich, and the portfolio manager ran the healthcare group, and it was owned by an investment bank. There was only one person in the world who fit that description. And so within 20 minutes of that hitting, Kathy Burton from Bloomberg was on the phone with me saying, I'm about to put out a headline saying that Chip Scarron is the tipper, or the person being tipped, and we're going to run a headline, do you have a comment? So the government sometimes actually lays out very, very clearly what will happen. One other very quick point about what happens in a crisis. One thing that we've been able to do, depending on the nature of the situation, but we like to have our clients, when possible, sign their investor letters in a crisis situation if it doesn't touch the top. And that's what I think really helped the folks at Diamondback, who have now gone forward and created a new firm that's been quite successful called Syndic. But because they were able to sign letters, investors had the confidence that this didn't touch them. So those are going to be another part of what you've got to look at when debating these issues. But again, you're going to have to deal with Dan and folks like him in figuring out what are the liabilities.
Yeah, to your point, I think it's you just have to assume, if you write a party letter, you assume you're handing it right to the Wall Street Journal. You might as well just assume that. So Kate, you spent 15 years on the buy side as an investor. Then you moved over to the operational side as a chief financial officer. Any insights that you can give to us on that transition?
Yeah, so I have a question for the room. So how many of you here are COOs? Any CFOs? Good looking bunch. How about PMs or CIOs? Okay. The rest just like here for cocktail hour with me? Okay. How many of you manage people? Okay. There is a difference between management and leadership. Managing people is telling them what to do. Leadership is something entirely different. It's setting out a vision in a strategic direction, and then your employees, they go figure it out. It's not the what, it's the how. So I'll give you guys 3 organizational unlocks for me. 1 is listening. It's our job to find disparate and often hidden information. Also, if you're speaking, then you're not solving problems. You're just advocating for your own view. But good listeners, we're a little misunderstood. You actually do have to talk. I think we just speak in a different way, where we're reflecting back what the person is saying, and we're asking a lot of questions. So for me, when I'm in meetings, I actively track a ratio of how many questions am I asking versus how many statements I'm making. 2, feedback. When I was in finance, candidly, I felt that I almost never got feedback on how to improve. And it's almost like this unspoken code of awkwardness in this industry, because you're all the smartest people in the room. Yeah, we read Josh Waitzkin. Mistakes are okay to make if they make it, but not me. And then it's it's hard. Those conversations are really hard to have, so people avoid it. And I think it is such a gift to give feedback. It is such a lost opportunity when we don't do it, because when you can coach somebody up and you see that person start to grow, to fulfill fulfill their potential, it's like the biggest value lever you have in your organization. 3, subtraction. What do I mean by subtraction? I like numbers, I like all the 4 operations, but I like this one in particular. So subtraction is solving complexity and problems through subtraction. Simplify it. You know, we have like an addition sickness, like now you're in charge, so like let's add more meetings, more steps, new mental models, ways of looking at things. Like let's bring it way down. When I started at TS Imagine, I had 30 people on my finance team. I have less than 20 now. That's my own decision. Our productivity went up. Transparency, up. Our accuracy, way up. So our employees really are suffering from time poverty, and giving people back time, I think, is the ultimate gift.
Interesting. Well, it sounds like the Thomas Edison, I think, was asked once. He was being criticized by the press. He's trying to create the light bulb. He was being criticized by the press. Like, you're a loser. You tried thousands, I think 10,000 ways. He's approaching, he's publishing the ways he tried to create, like 10,000 ways to create the light bulb. And he said, it's like, no. He's like, I'm just eliminating all the ways not to create a light bulb. He's subtracting, not exactly your point, but reminding me of that. So Dan, you've been in the trenches dealing with clients like Blue Ridge and clients here. Maybe can you give us a couple of things, some of the smartest things which has done, maybe some of the more dumb things that clients have done. Maybe not listen to your wise counsel.
Well, that's a terrific question. You know, we learn an enormous amount about leadership, you know, from our clients, and we definitely have, you know, takeaways. Both were like, yeah, this is a really great leadership moment, and you know, one of those is around succession planning. A lot of firms, you know, decide, you know, as John did, that it was going to go only with them, but other firms think, okay, well, we've got a lot of people, you know, employed here, we're going to keep going. And how to go about that in the portfolio management way is tough, because the way a lot of money is allocated in the United States is frankly done by personalities. It's a dating game, and if the date changes, they don't want to keep the money with you. But some firms, you know, I would use, you know, Farallon as an example. They were able to have a succession plan and execute on it, and the person before went on to run for president of the United States and had been very successful, and now, you know, Andrew Spokes runs it very successfully. And watching the leadership make that happen, and seeing the skills that are involved, and seeing the planning that's involved as a legal matter, as a contractual matter, but really mostly as a relationship matter, and saying, you know, the investors, in that example, there was one, and then this little trick we like to have with the advisor, I have one, and I put up a second one. So in this case, we run dual co-managing members, and then a couple of years later, I take down the first person. And so over that 2-year period of time, they were able to go out. Obviously, I wasn't in those meetings, but they were able to build trust with the investors, and the investors have stayed with them, and they were 30 billion now, they were 20 billion then. You know, we also learn on the negative side, we see time and time again leadership mistakes that we've talked about at this very panel, like getting stunned in a crisis, you know, freezing in a crisis. You know, it's not just fight or flight. That nervous system is fight or flight or freeze, which is why the deer freezes in front of your car. And you see it in your associates, you see it in hedge fund managers, this being stunned and not being able to react. And sometimes you see them getting lost on some of these personal vendettas. We see this time and again when you don't see leadership, where you see people leave, and you see like a trusted lieutenant, and I can't even give you an example. There's really 12 of these examples, and very, very smart people have trusted somebody for years, maybe decades, and they have a dispute, usually over money, sometimes over decision making, and the person leaves. And like 30 days later, every single time I'll get a call from a superstar, you know, person's name on the door, worth easily $1 billion. Like, we have to go send that person a letter because, well, what did they do? Well, they went and used the track record in order to get a new job. I'm like, well, you knew they were going to get a new job, and what did you think they were going to say to get the new job? They've been working with you for 25 years. They view everything you've done as being what they've done. And again, this is not one particular example, but they take it very personally. What happens is, most of the time, they take their eye off the ball from the portfolio, which we've talked about in this meeting. The portfolio could be anything. It could be your business, it could be your law firm. And they take their eye off the ball for weeks, maybe months. And so as outside counsel, as a trusted advisor, I try to work with them because they very much want to send a nasty letter right away to that person. And I learned this trick from another general counsel, from a general counsel I respect a lot. He said, what you do is you write that letter, and you write that letter, and you sit down with the founder and say, okay, I've got the letter. You read the letter, and it says all these things, I know you're like talking about me, and talking about the business, you're not allowed to do this. You know, things that are very, very hard to prevent. I'm not talking about stealing a hard drive from Goldman Sachs. I'm talking about discussing your track record. Very hard to police. And I show them the letter, and I make sure it's a Sunday night. I say, you sleep on this, and if you want this letter to go, we'll send it Monday morning. And I never hear back.
I like it. It's good advice. It's like psychology.
And you get sleep. And you got good sleep. That was in your lecture.
Way to tie it in.
And Dan, that was a nice reference to our collective client at Farallon. They had a pretty good comp firm helping them too. But you're exactly right. That was about 5 years in planning when Tom handed over to Andrew. And along each step of the way, there were specific announcements. And it culminated with us doing an institutional investor cover story about Andrew's folks taking over for Tom. And so, again, there was a lot of help from your team in kind of working through those elements of it, but the investor communications were central to the success.
So, Dean, love to go to you and talk a little bit about the topic that we talked about before, somewhat in my talk and workshop, and that's about saying no. The ability to say no as opposed to saying yes. Everybody wants to be able to say yes, and it's important to say no sometimes for time management reasons at a minimum. It's hard to say no. Any thoughts on how you do that?
I would agree, it's hard to say no.
I
will also say it gets easier to say no. But I'm going to once again wind it back to something actually that Kate said, because this is something that came up on me getting feedback at Goldman Sachs. And actually, one of the really helpful things about Goldman is there's no shortage of feedback. If you're a partner at the end of the year, they'll tell you you're number 11 out of 400 or number 399 out of 400. The issue with the feedback at Goldman is there was a lot of it, but it wasn't timely. It was once a year at the end of the year. So we've actually changed our system where we're now in a slightly less formal way. You get feedback at the end of the mandate, at the end of a transaction, at the end of an assignment, so it's fresh, and you can learn from that use going forward. So the ability to say no. So one of my reviews, and you get anxious for, no matter how senior you are, you want to hear mostly good things, and as much as a firm like Goldman Sachs will say compensation isn't tied to your review and performance, it's very tied to your review and performance, as it is in most places. But my review would be done at the time by either the president of the firm or division heads, and they would have this thing called a flyby, that about halfway into the review, either the CEO or the president, if you were running big business division, might stop in and share their feedback with you. Oh my God, I just saw you being reviewed, let me come in. You know, this idiosyncratic thing that's totally planned, and 90% of the time it's not a good stop by. So you did not want a flyby, as we call it at Goldman. So I'm having a review of what was, I think, a record year for our two businesses, our financing business and our brokerage business. And out of the corner of my eye, I see my friend and I see Gary Cohn walking by, and I'm thinking, Gary used to love to pace the trading floor. So I'm thinking he's just doing his usual rounds of what's going on in the markets. And then as he's getting to the time my boss filled in Pablo Salme, you know, on the Citadel, I see Gary slowing down, and I'm praying this is not going to be one of those flybys. Now I should have known, because most reviews the doors closed. When Pablo was doing a review, he left the door open. So I should have done that. So Gary pops in, He goes, review time, Dino. Just one thing to tell you, and I'll never forget, he looked at me, and he goes, you are way too senior a person at Goldman Sachs to be one of the 10 nicest people at the firm. First off, I'm nice, but I'm not that nice. And I wasn't exactly sure what and then he walked out, which is typical of Gary. So I look at my mom, looks at me, so I go back there, I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I don't mean it that you can't make tough decisions. You do. Actually, you're one of the folks that runs to problems, and you can say no, but there's a way and a time and a place to say no. And sometimes no isn't binary. It can be a no but as well. So I learned the ability when and how to say no. And we go through a partnership process every 2 years at Goldman Sachs, which is a really difficult process. And by definition, the top 3% of the firm will be put up for partner every 2 years, and half of those people will make it. And then we spend weeks doing our best to minimize the damage of those other really talented people leaving because they were told no, you're not making partner. So we got this routine of what we call no but. No, but if you do this, this, and this, next cycle around you can make partner. So for me, it wasn't using the word, it was figuring out how and when to use it. And by the way, the same can go for yes. I can't tell you how many times we've got into a situation with a client, a transaction, we're pricing somebody's business, and ultimately we get to the right place. But we made it so ultimately we say yes, we'll agree to those rates. Or yes, we'll do that, or yes, we'll provide this kind of margin, or yes, we'll let you use your GP's LP interest as collateral or personal loan, whatever it is, 100 things. But by the time we get to the yes, we've made it so painful and so confrontational that we've completely diluted the fact that we've said yes, and we get nothing for it. So I want to turn around the question over too, that there's also a way to say yes. And I'll leave it at that.
So Steve, I wanted to talk a little bit about an exercise that we did at Blue Ridge. It was a tabletop exercise. John Griffin came to me and said, Rich, I want you to think about having something documented. He came to me once actually before that and said, Rich, I love you. Well, why do you love me, John? He said, because you worry about everything, so I don't have to worry about anything. He said, so in this case, he said, I want you to document if there's a crisis, something happens, any crisis, it could be anything. It's like Blue Ridge was very true blue, who's above board. And you never know, there could be some crisis. I want us to be prepared in advance. So when John tells me to do something, I went overboard. I said, call everybody, and I wanted you to lead this, this effort. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that tabletop exercise, and it really led to this book.
Yeah. So when I got that call, I was like, this is terrific, because first of all, it tested my team in trying to come up with the scenarios. So for example, John likes to spend time in New Zealand. So one of the scenarios that we created was John goes off the grid, which is just not possible, as you probably know, Dean. But what happens if John disappears? Can't be reached, and it's days. And all of a sudden, we're trying to figure out where is John. He had gone off on some hiking trip in New Zealand. The cell service wasn't great. What are the outcomes? What happens if at some point investors are calling?
It's a hypothetical.
Of course, hypothetical, didn't happen. But so we played that scenario out. We had everybody take their roles, everybody from Terry O'Malley all the way through to the business development team as to how they would handle the situation if, for example, John turned out to have been injured and was on the payroll. How are you going to deal with these calls? What do we have to say? We had to ask our lawyers what were the key man issues that came up as a result of that. And so we played all those scenarios out over 2 or 3 different hours. So we had 4 or 5 scenarios that we did. And part of what we also did is what were the deliverables from that session. So what came out of it? We had our working group list updated. We knew who we had to reach, and everybody knew what the control and command structures were for each of the things. We began to put statements in place for things like a cyber attack, things that we knew all the list of incidents that could occur. And that was all of the elements of it that really made, I think, a big difference in terms of the preparation. And Rich, I think I'm allowed to talk about this, but I'd like you to spend 30 seconds on your SEC exam. Because you talk about planning, and this was, I think, a real testament to Rich's role at Blue Ridge and this outcome.
I'll just talk about it really quick. So we were going to, deregister with the SEC. Blue Ridge had wound down. We're going to deregister with the SEC the following Wednesday, and this was on Friday, and there were hardly any employees left. It was myself and Terry O'Malley, maybe Homer Smith. And Terry calls me, and I wasn't even coming into the office anymore. There really was nothing to do. He said, "You're never going to believe who called me." And you get that call, it's like, I knew, we had never been audited by the SEC in our 17, 18 years. We were always waiting and ready. Right, Marie? We were always ready to go.
Which is very unusual.
Right.
I've never heard that.
We were just true blue and everything. There's no reason to audit those guys. Anyway, so you're never going to have to call.
There's no true blue exception.
That's true.
Sounds like a
dark gray. Yes, of course. Anyway, so I was like, the SEC called. I was like, "You're kidding, right?" And I knew he was not kidding. And I said, "You know what? Bring it on. Bring it on." Then, of course, I ran to you. We were going, I wanted that. I always wanted that coveted no deficiency letter. It's like, I want that freaking letter. So we were preparing. We're prepared. Let them come in. Terry was like, I knew Terry would have to bear in front of it. And of course, we're always great to everybody's ready to come back and help on whatever we need. They came in, short story long. We did get that coveted no deficiency letter. We're prepared, as firms need to be. Let me move quickly because I want to get to a quick lightning round question. Open it up for questions. I know people want to get out and get some bites and drinks, but crystal ball. This was Dean's idea. If you had a crystal ball, look a few years forward in our industry. What do you expect? Just quick. Anybody can just throw it out there.
Okay. So there's going to be an increased importance of technology because using robust, sophisticated software, it's table stakes. And I'm going to give you the headline up front. I want to get a good grade from Steve. SaaS, real-time risk data, and multi-asset class seamless workflows with one single pane of visibility. That's where technology adoption is going to go. So last week, Bank of England gave a really interesting talk on heightened operational risk in the financial markets right now because there's unabated demand for financing driven by growth and alternatives. And man, I love it when a regulator talks my book. And the soundbite from that speech was, and she was talking specifically about Archegos and how it exposed this very dirty secret of this industry, which is there's a shocking lack of real-time data. And excess margin and collateral can prove to be very fickle mistresses during times of stress. So she said that market participants risk looking Looney Tunes, that you see that lucrative opportunity and you jump at it, but then the anvil flattens you and pancakes you. So I love that.
I think Dean had, that's what I meant by moving quickly on Goldman. Any other?
I actually thought that's what you
any other quick lightning round answers?
Sure, I would say two quick things. First, I think with technology, first off, I agree. We're going to continue to see great advancements, faster, smaller, everything in technology and AI. And I think it actually creates anxiety amongst some. And I think it's less a prediction and more an insight. I'd say whatever it is you do, we do, irregardless of where technology is or isn't, irregardless of what AI may or may not do for us, to be the top 10% of whatever you do, whether it's performance, job performance, fund performance, whatever it may be, that's the tick. That's the ticket and that's the trick. So I continue to focus on being the best you can. I do think that there's going to be great changes in related to technology and AI. I don't think it's going to transform our industry. And what I can say is over the last 2 decades, the number of times I heard that things were going to transform or die, the market's moving from fractional shares to decimalization was going to be the end of listed shares in OTC trading. That business became 4 times as profitable for the street. Europe, with a few exceptions, moving to a single currency was going to become the end of FX and currency trading. Business is 3 times larger now than it was then. So, and then on the flip side, it seems like every week there's something that's supposed to happen every 100 years, but it happens every week. So I remain optimistic. I think there'll be great changes, but I think the future, is bright. It might be a different type of bulb. It might be a halogen bulb or a different bulb, but it still is bright.
I'm gonna debate Dean on that, because I know
Lightning round.
I know that.
Anyway, she came to drop her mic. She was waiting for this moment.
I know you guys have your swaps
Look at it.
spreadsheets. Okay, I'm done.
I can't make a prediction for 5 years. I definitely think there'll be more money. The only thing I know for sure, there'll be more money to manage, more different and clever ways to manage it. I don't think we can agree that there'll be consolidation, or there will be or won't be distressed data. This is too hard to predict. There'll be more money to manage 5 years from today, and there'll be more and different people doing it all over the world.
I'm going to talk storm clouds real quick. How many folks here have either clients or affiliates or folks in London? Raise your hands. Okay. FCA has decided that they're going to take a page out of what the SEC was doing, which we dubbed the 4 Ps. Politics, press, punishment, and populism. And they are continuing to press their name and shame proposal. This is one of the scariest things I've ever seen, and everybody in the room needs to pay attention. They have revised their proposal, but right now it's basically they're going to give targets 10 days to respond once they've been told that they are the subjects of investigations, and if they decide to go forward, you're going to have 48 hours before there's a public announcement. That is a potential death knell. You've got to watch this. The comment period, we put in letters to FCA, or the only communications rep that did. We put a letter into Parliament. The next timeline is Feb 17th for the revised proposal, which is still terrible. So you've got to watch that. And then the last thing is, for those of you that are representing firms that had really big years and whose managers made a lot of money, Bloomberg is about to publish their rich list, followed by institutional investor. So if you had clients that made a lot of money, be prepared to be on that list. We've succeeded in getting 2 or 3 off through a little bit of the magic formula that only we can share for our clients. But those lists are coming out within days. That's my finale.
Yeah, that's a little bit about that part. Greg, I know we're waiting on. I know I also got to get some panelists out here. Should we take a question or two?
Hi. Question for Dean for his wonderful examples, but it also applies to Kate because you said you're a tennis player. So
Anytime.
yeah, decision making. Okay. Does the reversibility or the irreversibility of the decision you're about to take, does that influence the decision itself? You gave some examples. The reason I asked you that is once you've taken that shot, it either hits the net or it goes over. You can't change it. So
I can start. For us, absolutely, and I think it sort of gets, when there's time, there's some decisions that are more quickly made. It gets baked into the mosaic of decision variables, and the ability to reverse a decision. Look, we've We did that recently selling Green Sky and taking losses of billions of dollars on things that we made big decisions on. It took a lot of time to do them, and a lot of people's careers were impacted, and we essentially reversed those. So the answer is we do. We also try to say yes more often to the really big things. And the no's come out, it's interesting, a little bit more often on the small things, but we do take that into effect. And the other thing I would say is, when I started Goldman, we use these terms, I've got a feeling, I've got a hunch, my decision making is based on gut. Now, I guess sometimes that translates into, it means experience, but it's actually a pet peeve for us at Goldman. With the amount of data, with the amount of intelligence, with the amount of information that's out there, guts and intuition, and that's an overlay, not a variable. So I think the other thing we look at when we're making decisions is if we have the time, let's get as intelligent and as smart as we can about something before we kind of go to our gut and feel and vibe of something.
Yeah, I really like that. Both of those are in the book, by the way, talk about reversibility and character. Yeah. Any other quick?
Audrey should get a golf club. That was a great question.
Oh, you get a golf
Up for
club.
grabs.
You get a golf club.
Any
others?
other questions?
No, we good?
Awesome.
Everyone's ready to have something bite to eat, I guess.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you. Yeah, thank you.
A quick thank you to Kate, Dean, Steve, Dan. Fantastic, thank you. Thank you again to Brian Cassell and the peer exchange group. Where is Brian? He's over there. Thank you for helping coordinate. Fantastic. We haven't drawn the Titleist driver yet, although someone seems to be getting it, but we'll do that afterwards. Again, thank you to everyone who joined us. I think there's more people outside from the sounds of it. Enjoy the drinks and networking, and a big thank you again to Rich and the Arootah team. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the panel. Thank you guys.